better best. Their basic knife level would be the good, and those would be the typical knives that you can pick up at any hardware store or sporting merchant like Cabela's. Then they have a series up from that called their Select series, and then as you climb the tree, basically, you end up at what's called the Tony Bose series. Even though Tony Bose has designed a number of knives for Case, they're sold in both the basic models, basic product level, and the Select series. They shouldn't be confused with this level, which is basically the top of the food chain for Case. This knife was made in 2012, and so it's a fairly new knife. It ships in this nicely done zippered suede pouch. The pouch is debossed and embossed, and for those of you that don't know, debossing is when you produce the lettering or the image and it goes into the material. It kind of, you can think of it as an indentation rather. And embossing is where the image, excuse me, and letters rise up out of the material. You can do them different ways, but this particular pouch features a little bit of both. And it's nicely done. It does have a nylon covering trim, I should say, decently stitched. It's not flawless, but this makes for a nice presentation, and it should, because this isn't an inexpensive knife. This is actually pretty expensive. Typical Case knives at the basic level will go for anywhere from 50 bucks up to right around 110. The Select series, you're going to be paying another 30 to 50 bucks more, and the Tony Bose series at the top of the product chain is going to go for $275 to in excess of $500. So having this kind of presentation is important, and of course it comes with your paperwork and wrapped in some tissue paper. I commented on this in another video, but I wish that Case and Queen and a few others would wrap their knives in something less fragile than this tissue paper. Great Eastern Cutlery wraps their products in a nice, thicker, more durable wax paper, and for knives that aren't everyday use carry knives, you want something like that to store them in, because they protect the knives against moisture and rust and corrosion. It's just a better way to store it. So dig through all this charming tissue paper to get the knife. There it is. This model is called the Lannys clip. It is a fairly small knife. It is a single bladed knife. It is done in a jigged chestnut bone. This is around the 275. This is kind of the entry point level of the Tony Bose series. But $275 as an entry point is kind of expensive. But I can tell you that it's worth every bit of it. Unlike the Case basic level, the shield that you see on the handle there, it's pinned in. And pinned on shields are better than glued on shields, though I've only had one glued on shield ever come off, and it wasn't on a Case knife. But you don't end up with the sloppy glue squeeze out around the shield and the odd fit. With a pinned on shield, you end up with just a better product overall. It costs a little more, but if I had my way, all knives would have their shields pinned on. At least all knives that were over 60 bucks. That's the way I see it. And even then, if 60 bucks didn't cover the cost of doing the pin on, I'd happily pay more than that. And maybe I'm an exception to the rule, but it is what it is. Another interesting facet to this knife, at this tier, Case does a really nice job of dyeing their bone scales. Case always does a great job of making their knives pretty, all the way at the least expensive up to the most expensive. But at the basic level, sometimes the die job on the handle scales leaves a little bit to be desired. Not at this level, it's done beautifully and it has depth and richness. The jigging pattern on here is extremely well done. Pins are all set at the depth that they should be. None of them are sticking out to snag on anything. The edges are nicely rounded. Beautiful, beautiful job. The bolster, back springs, and blade, interestingly enough, are all made out of 154 cm premium steel. That's not super steel. We're not talking about S90V or M4 or any of that, M390. What we're talking about is just a nice premium steel, meaning that it's an upscale steel without going to the super steels. I've had a lot of experience with 154 cm and it holds up extremely well. It's got good rust resistance, holds an edge nicely when it's hardened properly, sharpens fairly easily. Good stuff. This knife has a half stop, and one of the hallmark indications of really good workmanship is when the half stop fits flush. When the blade, rather, is in the half stop position, the back spring fits flush with the bolsters and the handle scales. And I don't know if you can see this on camera. That fitting is completely perfect. You almost can't tell that there are multiple pieces involved between the liners, the back spring, the bolsters, and the blade. Amazing. The other nice thing about this level of product is that you actually get correct walk and talk, snap, lockup. It's not too much resistance when you go to open the blade, so it's not a nail breaker, but there's plenty of resistance so that when it's open, both in the half stop and the fully open position, there's a lot of resistance to getting the blade to close, which is what you want in a slip joint. It makes for a much safer knife. Additionally, in the open position, that blade tang at the point where it meets the liners and the bolsters in the back spring, it's perfect, completely perfect. And for $275 to $300, that's pretty amazing. That view there also gives you a nice cross section of the bolsters, and you can see that they feature a large flute on both sides. You can see that right there. Beautifully done. The machining is impeccable, absolutely impeccable. Just like the name says, this is Lanny's clip. It is a clip blade shape, which is a little different. It almost looks kind of tactical if you look at the swedge and all that. The grind lines and satin finish on this knife are absolutely perfect. On the back, the tang stamp reads 154 cm USA TB, some numbers, 2012. That means the knife was made in 2012. And on the front, it's stamped with Case USA, and then it has the 10-dot system because this is a 2012. Two of the dots are missing. I like the size of the nail nick on the blade there. It's actually one where you can easily get your nail into it. There's a good look at the swedge. And this knife, of course, came out of the package super sharp. All in all, this is a beautiful example of hallmark level cutlery. This is the way knives should be made. I know in this age, materialism is kind of a disease we all suffer, but at the same point, being able to hold in your hands something where the level of quality is literally impeccable, it's a joy. And granted, it's a small joy in life. There's so many things that are much more important than anything we have materially, but that shouldn't make us guilty about owning something that's just nice to own. The fact of the matter is, this knife is so well put together that I'll be able to pass it down to my kids, and they can pass it down to their kids, and as long as everybody takes reasonable care of it, it'll be able to go down multiple generations and still be a fantastic, totally functional knife. So Case hit a home run with their Tony Bose series. This knife is a great example of that. If you haven't gotten into slip joint knife collecting, I really suggest you do. Yeah, there are a ton of awesome, absolutely magnificent modern folding designs out there, and I love my folding knives, my modern folding knives. But this is where it all began, right here. What I'm holding in my hand, the slip joint knives are where folding cutlery started. And the history is so incredibly rich, both with Case Company and the industry itself. There are a ton of other companies in there that throughout the past 150 years have put an indelible stamp upon the cutlery industry. It's just a fascinating walk through time to go and research that. So I highly suggest you try it, check it out, and that's pretty much it. Have a great day. Hope you enjoyed it. It being the video, and I'll see ya.